Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making a holiday countdown calendar. Well, my daughter and now my granddaughter through association are absolute holiday nuts. They are the type that count down like a full year to see Halloween come around or to see Christmas come back around. They decorate, one holiday ends, and then they start decorating for the next right away. And you know what? It's good fun. Why not? So my daughter asked me, could I come up with a 365 countdown calendar to be able to count down to, let's just say, Halloween, for example. And that's what we're going to do today. And it all starts off with some blocks of maple. And the 12 blocks of maple measure 1 9/16 by 1 9/16 by 1 9/16. The very first thing that we want to do, because the maple is going to be handled obviously on a regular basis, these edges are very sharp, and if you've ever run your fingers along maple just accidentally in the shop, you know how easily these sharp, crisp edges can cut. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it over to the router table and place a 1/8 round over on all surfaces. Now, do not hold this with your hands, guys. That is a fool's game, and you're going to end up with a trip to the ER. So what you'll want to do is hold it by some other means. In my case, I'm just using a hand screw clamp to put the round over on these blocks, because it's always better for the router bit to dig into a wooden hand screw clamp than it is to have it dig into your fingers. So get all of these corners rounded off with the 1/8 round over, and then we can carry on from there. And when you're done, you should have 12 that look like this. A little bit of light sanding will take off any burn marks from your router bit and sand the blocks all over, make them nice and smooth. So we can put these aside for now, and what I have is some 1/4 inch thick maple, and I have taken that, ripped it to a width of 2 inches, and I have cut 1/8 of an inch up from the bottom. Over at the table saw, I have cut a 1/8 inch wide by 1/8 inch deep dado. And what I'm going to do is, over at the table saw, using my miter fence, I am going to miter this up to form a box that has an interior dimension of 5 inches by 5 inches. Well, as I was cutting these pieces, I laid them in their cut order along the bench and kept them that way. That way, when these are glued together, the grain will be as seamless as possible. So what we have is a piece of 1.5 inch painter's tape here, and I have a straight edge, and I'm just going to line up each piece carefully here. We're going to use the painter's tape, and with the sticky side up, we're going to align all of our miters, just like this, onto our masking tape and tight along the edge of our straight edge here to make sure that everything lines up. And once we're happy with the alignment, we can glue this together. I've cut a piece of 1/8 inch hardboard that is 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. You get that measurement by the interior dimensions of your box plus the distance or the depth of your dados. So we'll just line this last piece up here. Okay, we will now apply glue to each one of our miters, and let me show you how you can use the painter's tape to hold your box together. So we'll just use this brush to get a nice even coat of glue along in our miters. Just like this. Now don't forget as well to get glue on the end miters. And once you're happy with the glue coverage that you've got, we can just slide this piece up to mate with this one. We'll place our base in here in our dado, and then we'll roll it to the next one, and then we'll bring this last one up to meet like this, pull it tight, and there we go, and tape it. All right. And that is our box now clamped and ready to go. I'm going to clean up all the squeeze out and we can put this aside to dry. While we're waiting for our box to dry up, I have a piece of maple. It measures 6 inches by 6 inches and it's 9/16 of an inch thick. This is going to be the lid of our box. So what I want to do is I want to mark the interior dimension of our box all the way around on our piece here. So that will be a line 1/2 inch in from each side. And if you remember, the interior dimensions of our box ended up being 5 by 5. So I just want to verify now that if I cut where I think I'm going to cut, it's going to give me a 5 by 5 square left in the middle. And in fact, it does. So what I want to do now is I want to place a rabbet all the way around. I want it to be 1/8 of an inch deep. So we can just set it up at the table saw so that it strikes on the line here, leaving our interior 5 by 5 square raised. We will set the height of our blade at 1/8 of an inch, and then we will run this through all the way around. We will readjust our fence and then run it through again, and readjust our fence and run it through again. And we will keep repeating that process until we end up with our rabbet all the way around our box lid. Now, once you've verified that your lid will fit on your box, you will most likely have a few grooves here from your table saw blade. And a sharp 1/2 inch chisel will do just a perfect job of trimming those down and making everything flush and flat. Alternatively, if you don't have a sharp chisel or if you don't have a 1/2 inch chisel, you can just use a sanding block and sand it all down, get all of these smooth, and then from there, what we want to do is head back over to the table saw. So at this point, I want to put a slight chamfer on the top edge of our lid. So I've tilted my blade on the table saw to 45 degrees. I've set my fence at 5 3/4 of an inch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this through, spin it 90 degrees, run it through 90 degrees until I get that chamfer cut the way I want it all the way around. And there we have the lid to our countdown. Now, in case you're wondering what the whole purpose of this box is, because of the way I'm designing this countdown, you're going to need a space to keep 9 of your spare blocks. So with that in mind, we will be able to house our 9 spare blocks in our box and have everything sit nice and pretty, just like that. But we now need to make the rack that is going to hold our blocks here in our countdown. So I think what I would like is for my numbers of the countdown to sit up on an angle, kind of like this at a 45. So we're going to need something to hold it in place like that. And for that, I think I'm going to try to find in the rack a piece of contrasting wood. Well, I found this piece of walnut over in the rack and it measures 1 1/8 inches thick. I've cut it to be 5 inches long, and the width, I'm not even sure, it's maybe 3.5, 4 inches. It really doesn't matter because I'm going to trim it up afterwards anyway. So what I have is I've drawn out the V-notch here that I want to cut in order to house my blocks. And I'm just going to cut this over the table saw. It's an easy cut. We're going to tilt the blade to 45 degrees, raise it up to a height which will be up to this line here, which would be 1/4 of an inch down from what will be the top while we're cutting it. And we will run it through, cutting both of these lines, separating our center core. And then we can go on from there. And while we're at it, I'm just going to cut off this front edge here on a 45 degree, and then I'll probably end up cutting it flat to turn it into a chamfer. So let me get that cut and I'll show you what we end up with. And this is the final shape that I ended up with for the rack for the blocks. So in just a bit, we're going to glue this to the lid. This will get glued down just like this. I'm actually going to put it cross grain. One grain is going this way on the lid. I'm going to put the grain of the walnut going this way, and I'm just going to do that for a little bit of stability. That's the only reason. So after this is glued on, of course, your blocks can sit right in here just like this, and you'll display the number of days left right there. So bottom line here now is what I really want to do is I want to drill a shallow hole here, and I want to mount a rare earth magnet. It doesn't matter the size as long as it's capable of holding a small wooden plaque that we will make for right here. So let me get this hole drilled, and then we will glue in a rare earth magnet. And we'll just mix up a little bit of 2-part epoxy and glue that in place. Well, I've untaped our main box and given it a good sanding, and I just want to show you here, look at the way the grain follows all the way around. It's not perfect, but it really gives it that extra nice touch when the grain kind of carries on around the box. The way it slopes down here, comes along, it connects, it just gives it that extra professional look. So just something to keep in mind. Anyway, I've given all the pieces a good sanding, and all we're going to do now that our magnet is dried up in our hole here is I'm going to center this block bracket, block holder, whatever you want to call it. We're going to center it on here, and I'm going to glue it in place on the lid, just like this. Well, at this point, I have cut 5 pieces of poplar. They're 1/8 of an inch thick, 1.25 inches wide, and 4.5 inches long. These will end up being eventually the plaques that will tell us here at the front of our countdown what it is we're counting down to. But for now, they're just pieces of poplar. We're kind of at a standstill here only because we have some painting to do. Yes, I said painting. This is one of the projects that calls for it. As much as I hate painting wood, this one leaves me no choice. So what we're going to do is 4 of our blocks here, our countdown blocks, will be painted black. 4 will be painted red, and 4 will be painted white. As well, the rest of our pieces, our maple box and our maple lid, I'm going to apply a finish to those because those parts of the build actually are done. So I will be applying a satin finish varnish to both of these pieces, and I guess that's it for filming for today. So when I come back, basically will be when all of this stuff has the finish applied and dried. With the paint dry on all of our blocks, I've now used my wife's Cricut cutter to cut custom vinyl numbers for each set of the blocks. On one block, you will need a 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9. The second block will have 8, 2, 4, 7, 1. The third block will have 4, 0, 1, 3, 5, 9. And the fourth block will be 7, 2, 8, 0, 1, 3. And after applying the vinyl, you end up with 3 custom sets of countdown numbers that you can count down a whole year if you want. 2 of the blocks, the first 2 that I mentioned, will have spare spaces. So on the Halloween one, I've placed a ghost on one, and on the other one, once I find it here, there we go, I've got a little witch's hat. On the one for the Christmas set, the red and the white, one has a little Christmas tree, and another has a Santa hat. And on the generic set, which will be the white and the black, one will have a candle for like birthdays or something like that. And one, again, when I find it, will have a heart, let's say for an anniversary or Valentine's Day. So with these numbers done, I have also, on the plaques, placed a square of vinyl and then done custom letters. Days until Halloween, days until vacation, days until our anniversary, or days until Christmas. And one of them I have placed on just a white square of vinyl, and this you can use as a whiteboard. So you can write your own message on there and then wipe it off as you go. You could make it a chalkboard too if you want it, by painting it with a flat black or chalkboard paint. But now that we have that done, we need to have a way to attach our plaques onto our magnet here, onto our base. And for that, we're going to need some washers. So I have some number 8 steel washers, and on each one of our plaques, right in the middle, I have marked the center mark. And we're going to glue, using some CA glue, we're going to glue our washers onto our center point. But you don't want to center it like that, because what happens with washers, because there's a hole in the middle, they don't like to sit flat. They do not sit centered like that because the hole kind of messes them up. I mean, you could force it if you want, but in general, they sit where the majority of the material is. So you want to place the majority or the edge of the washer glued in place in the center of your plaque. So we're going to glue each one of these up, and I'll show you what we end up with at that point. And when your washers are dry on the back, then the plaque will just snap here onto the front, just like that. And you can place the number of days that are left for whatever holiday you want here in the front. I don't know, let's say that there's 185 days until Halloween. And then, of course, as you continue on, you just count down 184, and then you can change the block to 183, and then down to 182, etc., etc. It's just a fun little countdown. You can do it for Halloween, you can do it for Christmas, you can do it for whatever you like. But honestly, guys, this is just a fun little project. And when everything is said and done and the other blocks are not being used, they all store neatly in this case or the base of your countdown, as well as your plaques. Your plaques will all store in here as well, off to the sides. Just like this, right in the side there, and the other set sits up front, just like that. 2 of them will fit on each side, and that's it. And there you go. There is your holiday countdown. And there you have it. A custom holiday countdown calendar. Guys, these projects are dead simple to make, and they open themselves up to so many modifications. Those little plaques, you can make them larger, you can make them smaller, you can hand paint them, you can decorate them. Those blocks, you don't have to use vinyl if you don't want to. I did it because I have access to it. Paint them. Paint the numbers on, hand stencil them, wood burning. There's all kinds of options when it comes to a project like this, and you can go as far or hold back as much as you want. Now for me, for this project, there is quite a bit of space in behind the blocks, and for that, well, say for Christmas, you could put a little small Christmas tree or a little snowman or that sort of thing. You could decorate the top surface of this project to match the holiday that you're counting down to. This was initially supposed to be a Halloween countdown, and then it kind of morphed. It kind of went off the deep end to add to more and more holidays, and that's where the base ended up coming from, to house all the extra blocks and the extra plaques. Now, truth be told, for mine, I kind of made a bit of a mistake where I didn't leave enough room for the plaques and the thickness of the vinyl and, of course, the washers. I kind of forgot all about that, and because of that, my plaques don't fit in properly. But I can store them elsewhere in a safe place while the calendar is being used, and, you know, we can always come up with something, but keep that in mind. For the space on the inside, make sure that you leave ample space to house your blocks. Either way, if you're a fan of holidays, whether it be Christmas or Easter or Halloween or whatever the holiday is, 4th of July, Canada Day, it doesn't matter. Whatever holiday you're a fan of, and if you're excited about it and you want to count down to it or get your kids excited about it with a countdown, this is the project for you. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in to this week's show. This was actually my daughter's idea, and I helped her make one of her own, and then I decided I'm going to make one for the show. And of course, now she's saying, oh great, you hijack my idea and then you make a really cool one that's all fancy and stuff, and you didn't make me one. So this one will probably go to my daughter. But either way, guys, I hope that you try it. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click that bell and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the program. I want to thank you so much, guys, for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you're going to try this for yourself. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.